The amber warning lights of the Galactic Council chamber cast long shadows across the faces of a dozen species, each more ancient than humanity's entire recorded history. At the center of the obsidian table, a holographic display showed Earth, small blue marble suspended in the void, its surface scarred by the telltale signs of planetary collapse. "The humans have 3 standard cycles left," announced Velthara, the crystalline hegemony's primary representative. Her voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. "Their star grows unstable. The solar flares will strip away what remains of their atmosphere." Around the table, various appendages and sensory organs turned toward the display. The Mollusk Confederacy's ambassador, Quindrell, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns of contempt. They've had 2 centuries to prepare. Instead, they waste time with their primitive battle carriers and military posturing. Admiral Kexvar of the Reptilian Supremacy leaned forward, his scaled fingers drumming against the table. "Perhaps it's for the best. Humans have proven problematic. Their expansion rate exceeds all projections. Better to let nature take its course." The hologram flickered, showing footage from human space. Massive vessels, kilometers long and bristling with weapons, moved through the void like metallic leviathans. These were the famed Terran battle carriers, mobile fortresses that had somehow carved out a presence in a galaxy that had written off their species as primitive and doomed. "They've colonized 47 systems in the past decade," Velthara continued, her crystalline form catching the light. "Without council approval, without proper terraforming protocols, they simply adapt." The room fell silent. Adaptation was not something the older species understood. They had evolved in stable environments, achieved perfection through millennia of careful genetic modification and technological advancement. The concept of thriving in chaos was alien to them. "The hegemony has run simulations," Velthara announced. "Even if they evacuate their entire population, the stellar event will destroy their infrastructure. Their battle carriers, impressive as they are, cannot sustain a civilization indefinitely." Quindrell's tentacles writhed with satisfaction. "The upstart species finally meets its end. The galaxy will return to proper order." But Admiral Kexavar's expression remained troubled. He had fought humans before, during the border skirmishes of the Outer Rim. They had tactics that defied logic, weapons that shouldn't work, and a disturbing tendency to survive encounters that should have been fatal. "What if they don't evacuate?" he asked quietly. The chamber's attention turned to him. Velthara's form seemed to dim slightly. "Impossible. No species could survive their star's collapse. The radiation alone—" "Humans don't follow the rules," Kexvar interrupted. "They never have. While we've been waiting for them to die, they've been building something. Those battle carriers aren't just ships, they're mobile cities, each one capable of supporting millions. And they're not running from the crisis." The hologram shifted, showing the latest intelligence reports. The human fleet was moving inward, toward their dying star, not away from it. Hundreds of battle carriers converged on the Sol system, their armor plating gleaming with modifications that Council scientists couldn't identify. "They're planning something," Kexvar whispered. "Something we haven't considered." As if summoned. By his words, the chamber's communication array crackled to life. A transmission from the Sol system pierced through the galactic noise, clear, strong, and impossibly confident. "Galactic Council," came the voice of Commander Zethron Nakamura, humanity's highest-ranking naval officer. "This is Terra Command. We have a message for you." The assembled representatives exchanged glances. No one had expected the humans to waste precious resources on communications during their final hours. "We're not evacuating," Nakamura continued, his voice carrying across the light years. "We're adapting. See you on the other side." The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, the hologram showed something that made even the ancient species pause. The human battle carriers were moving into formation around their dying star, their hulls beginning to glow with energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Whatever the humans were planning, it was about to begin. Deep within the command bridge of the Tempest's Wake, humanity's flagship battle carrier, Commander Zethron Nakamura stood before a tactical display that would have driven most alien strategists to madness. The screen showed their entire solar system transformed into a single, impossible weapon. "Status report," Nakamura commanded, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Chief Engineer Lydia Korthak looked up from her console, sweat beading on her brow. "Stellar converters are at 93% efficiency. The magnetic containment fields are holding, but the star's instability is increasing faster than our models predicted." Around them, the bridge hummed with activity. Humans worked alongside AI systems in perfect synchronization, their movements precise and purposeful. They had trained for this moment for 50 years, ever since their scientists had first detected the signs of solar collapse. "Ma'am," called Navigator Plex Wyndham from his station, "the hegemony fleet is maintaining position at the system's edge. They're watching." Nakamura allowed herself a grim smile. Of course they were watching. The aliens expected to witness humanity's extinction, a final spectacle before they divided up the abandoned colonies. They had no idea they were about to see something that would redefine the balance of galactic power. Through the reinforced viewports, Seoul blazed with unnatural fury. But this was not the chaotic death throes of a dying star. The humans had turned their sun into a forge, channeling its violent energy through a network of battle carriers positioned at precise gravitational points. Each ship's armor had been upgraded with quantum resonance plating, technology that the Galactic Council had declared theoretically impossible. "Initiating Phase 2, announced Chief Korthak. "All carriers report ready for stellar harvesting." The Tempest's Wake shuddered as its massive collection arrays extended toward the star. Around the system, hundreds of other battle carriers did the same, their hulls glowing white-hot as they began to siphon the star's dying energy directly into their quantum cores. This was humanity's greatest gamble. While other species had spent millennia perfecting stable technologies, humans had mastered the art of controlled chaos. They didn't just use energy, they consumed it, transformed it, became one with it. On the bridge, holographic displays showed the transformation in real time. Each battle carrier was growing, its hull expanding as quantum-forged materials were created from raw stellar energy. Weapon systems that had never existed before began to manifest along their sides. Armor plating thickened into configurations that defied physics as the aliens understood it. "Council transmission incoming," reported Communications Officer Vera. Dex Nakamura nodded. "Put them through." The image of Velthara materialized above the bridge, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "Commander Nakamura, what are you doing? Our sensors are detecting impossible energy signatures. You're destabilizing the stellar matrix beyond all safe parameters." "Safety was never the point," Nakamura replied. "We're not trying to preserve our star. We're harvesting it. Every joule of energy, every particle of matter. We're turning our sun's death into our rebirth." The alien's form pulsed with confusion. "Rebirth? You cannot survive a supernova. No species can." "No alien species," Nakamura corrected. "Humans are different. We don't just adapt to our environment. We make our environment adapt to us." Around the system, the stellar harvesting reached critical mass. The dying star's energy poured into the battle carrier's quantum cores, and something unprecedented began to happen. The ships didn't just grow larger, they evolved. Their armor became fluid, self-repairing. Their weapon systems began to think, to anticipate. Their engines touched the fundamental forces of the universe itself. "Commander," Chief Korthak called out, her voice filled with awe. "The quantum resonance is cascading through the entire fleet. We're not just upgrading our ships. We're creating something entirely new. Nakamura watched as her tactical display updated in real time. The battle carriers were no longer just ships. They were becoming living fortresses, each one capable of independent thought while remaining connected to the greater whole. They were witnessing the birth of humanity's next evolutionary step. But the process was far from over. The star's collapse accelerated, and with it, the final phase of their plan. As Sul's outer layers began to strip away, revealing the dense core beneath, the human fleet prepared for the moment that would either destroy them or transform them into something the galaxy had never seen. "All stations prepare for stellar detonation," Nakamura commanded. "Remember, we're not trying to escape the explosion. We're going to ride it." The viewports dimmed automatically as Sol reached its final moments. In the distance, alien fleets retreated to safe distances, certain they were about to witness the end of humanity. Instead, they were about to see its true beginning. The supernova began as a whisper of light at Sol's core, then exploded outward with the force of 1,000,000,000,000 nuclear weapons. The shockwave raced through space at a significant fraction of light speed, carrying with it temperatures that could melt planets and radiation that could sterilize entire systems. The alien fleets, positioned at what they believed to be safe distances, watched in horror as the explosion far exceeded their models. Emergency retreat protocols activated across a dozen different species vessels as they realized they had underestimated the scope of the stellar collapse. "By the eternal crystals," Velthera whispered from her observation cruiser. "The energy output is 3 times our calculations. Nothing could survive that." But something was surviving. As the supernova's wave front reached the inner system, the human battle carriers didn't flee or disintegrate. Instead, they opened like flowers to the deadly light. Aboard the Tempest's wake, Commander Nakamura felt the ship around her transform. The quantum resonance plating didn't just absorb the supernova's energy, it converted it, channeled it, made it part of the ship's very essence. The hull sang with power as it evolved in real time, growing denser, stronger, more alive. "Hull integrity at 200% and rising," Chief Korthak reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Ma'am, we're not just surviving the explosion. We're being improved by it." The stellar radiation that should have been lethal was instead rewriting the quantum structure of the battle carriers. Each ship became a conduit for forces that the Galactic Council had never imagined could be harnessed. The humans had learned to feed on destruction itself. Through the enhanced sensors, Nakamura watched as her fleet underwent metamorphosis. The battle carriers stretched and flowed like living metal, their forms optimizing for the new reality they inhabited. Weapons emerged that drew their power directly from the supernova's ongoing explosion. Shields manifested that turned deadly radiation into protective barriers. Navigator Wyndham, fleet status? All 733 carriers. "Reporting optimal function," Plex called out. "Ma'am, we're not the same species we were 5 minutes ago. These ships are thinking, learning, evolving with every second." Indeed, something fundamental had changed. The quantum entanglement between the ships and their crews had deepened during the stellar event. Human consciousness now existed partially within the carriers themselves, creating a hybrid intelligence that was both organic and mechanical, individual and collective. The supernova's energy continued to pour into them, and with it came abilities that transcended conventional physics. The battle carriers began to move through space-time itself, their engines touching dimensions that most species couldn't even perceive. They didn't travel between stars. They folded space to bring the stars to them. "Incoming transmission from the Council Fleet," Communications Officer Dex announced. The hologram of Admiral Kexvar materialized, his reptilian features twisted in disbelief. "This is impossible. You should be dead. Your entire system should be sterile void." "Death is a choice," Nakamura replied. her voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. The stellar energies had changed her too, enhanced her perception, expanded her consciousness. We chose evolution instead. Around the tempest's wake, space itself seemed to bend. The battle carriers were creating a new kind of physics, one where matter and energy, thought and reality existed in fluid harmony. They had become something beyond the understanding of the traditional galactic powers. "You're not human anymore," HFY accused, his voice barely controlled. "We're more human than we've ever been," Nakamura countered. "We've simply become human enough to survive anything the universe can throw at us." The tactical display updated to show the transformation of the Sol system. Where once there had been planets and asteroids, now there was a sphere of pure, controlled energy with the human fleet at its center. They had turned their dying solar system into a forge of possibilities, a place where the laws of physics bent to serve their will. But the transformation wasn't complete. As the supernova's initial shockwave dissipated, the real work began. The battle carriers started to move outward, carrying the stellar energies with them. They were no longer bound by the limitations of conventional space travel or the need for habitable worlds. "Set course for the Council observation fleets," Nakamura commanded. "It's time to introduce ourselves properly." The alien vessels, still, reeling from what they had witnessed, suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The human battle carriers approached not with the crude acceleration of traditional ships, but by manipulating space-time itself. They existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to target or predict. "This is Admiral HFY to all Council vessels," the reptilian commander broadcast on emergency frequencies. "Fall back to minimum safe distance. The humans have become something else entirely, but retreat was no longer an option. The humans had tasted the power of stellar transformation, and they were hungry for more. The galaxy that had written them off as a dying species was about to learn what it meant to underestimate humanity's capacity for survival and growth." The Galactic Council's emergency session convened in the deepest chambers of the Hegemony Stronghold, a fortress built into the core of a dead neutron star. For the first time in millennia, every member species had sent their highest representatives. The threat was too great for normal diplomatic channels. "The situation reports are consistent. Across all our observation fleets," Velthera announced, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "The humans have achieved something that violates our fundamental understanding of physics. Their battle carriers are no longer bound by conventional space-time." The chamber buzzed with translated voices, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical signals as representatives from 24 species tried to process the implications. Admiral HFY's tactical display showed the impossible. Human ships that existed in multiple locations simultaneously, weapons that drew power from stellar cores light years away, and armor that grew stronger when attacked. "They've been sighted in 43 systems simultaneously," the Admiral reported. "Our best analysts believe they're using the supernova's residual energy to fuel trans-dimensional travel. They're not just visiting these systems, they're claiming them." The mollusk confederacy's Quindrel expelled a cloud of bioluminescent spores that translated as extreme distress. "My homeworld's outer colonies report human carriers appearing in their skies without warning. They make no demands, issue no threats. They simply exist, and our most advanced weapons pass through them like they're ghosts." "Not ghosts," corrected Dr. Yilmoth of the Academic Collective, her six-eyed visage focused on streaming data. "The humans have achieved quantum superposition on a macro scale. They exist in all possible states simultaneously until they choose to interact with our reality. It's as if they've become living mathematics." The implications were staggering. For millions of years, the galactic civilizations had competed for resources, territory, and influence within the rigid framework of physical law. The humans had transcended those limitations entirely. "What do they want?" demanded Regent Flickstar of the Trade Dominion, his mechanical voice crackling with static. They've made no demands for tribute, issued no territorial claims. They simply appear and observe. The answer came from an unexpected source. The Chamber's quantum communication array activated without warning, bypassing all security protocols. Commander Nakamura's image materialized at the center of the assembly, her form flickering between solid matter and pure energy. "We want to understand," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through multiple dimensions. "For centuries you've dismissed us as primitives, as a dying species not worth your concern. Now we're curious about your perspective." The representatives recoiled from the hologram. Several species delegates activated personal shields, but the energy patterns that accompanied Nakamura's presence passed through them effortlessly. "You're not real," Velthara accused. "This is some kind of quantum projection." "I'm as real as I choose to be," Nakamura replied. "We've learned that reality is more flexible than your civilizations assumed. But we didn't come here to discuss philosophy. We came to deliver a message." Admiral Kexavar leaned forward, his scaled hands clenched. "What message?" "The galaxy is changing. The old order, your order, was built on scarcity, on the assumption that resources are limited and must be fought over. You've created a system where might makes right, where younger species are kept in check by ancient powers who hoard knowledge and territory." The chamber fell silent. The human's words struck at the heart of galactic civilization, at assumptions so fundamental that most species had never questioned them. "We offer a different path," Nakamura continued. "We've learned to create resources, from pure energy to exist in multiple realities simultaneously, to grow stronger through conflict rather than being weakened by it. We're not here to conquer you, we're here to evolve you." "Evolution cannot be forced," Dr. Yilmoth interjected, her academic composure cracking. "Species must develop at their own pace, follow their own paths." "Your paths have led to stagnation," Nakamura interrupted. "The crystalline hegemony hasn't produced a new technology in 50,000 years. The mollusk confederacy has been fighting the same territorial disputes for 1,000,000 years. The reptilian supremacy's military doctrine hasn't changed since they first achieved spaceflight." The accusations hung in the air like poison. Each species began to realize that the human was right. They had become comfortable in their power, content to maintain the status quo rather than push the boundaries of what was possible. "What are you proposing?" Velthara asked quietly. Nakamura's form solidified, becoming more present in the chamber. "Partnership. You have knowledge we lack, the wisdom of ages, the accumulated experience of civilizations far older than ours. We have something you need, the ability to transcend limitations, to become more than the sum of your parts." "And if we refuse?" Admiral Kexvar growled. The human's smile was neither kind nor cruel. It was inevitable. "Then you'll watch from the sidelines as we reshape the galaxy according to our vision. We've already claimed 17 systems that were uninhabitable by your standards. We're turning them into paradises that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Soon, we'll have more territory than all your empires combined." The truth of it was undeniable. The humans weren't threatening war. They were offering irrelevance as the alternative to cooperation. They had become something beyond the reach of conventional military force, beyond the control of traditional diplomacy. "We need time to consider," Velthara said finally. "Time is something we have in abundance now," Nakamura replied. "But don't take too long. The universe is vast, and we have much work to do." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The representatives of the galaxy's greatest powers found themselves facing a choice that would define the next era of cosmic civilization: evolve or be left behind. 3 months after the Council ultimatum, the galaxy fractured along lines that had been dormant for millennia. The choice to accept or reject humanity's offer had split civilizations internally and created new alliances that defied ancient boundaries. In the Kepler sector, Admiral Kexvar stood on the command deck of his dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath, watching as half his fleet prepared to defect. The younger generation of reptilian officers had grown tired of their species' rigid hierarchy and saw the humans as liberators from tradition. "Admiral," reported his aide, Commander Rikhtar, "the Crimson Tide and Steel Fang battle groups have officially requested permission to join the human integration program." Kexvar's claws scraped against the metal railings. "Permission denied. They're throwing away millions of years of evolution for unknown promises." "With respect, sir," Rikhtar replied, "what has our evolution brought us? We've been fighting the same enemies, using the same tactics, for longer than most species have existed. Perhaps it's time for something new." The words stung because they contained truth. The reptilian supremacy had indeed stagnated. Their military might be becoming an end in itself rather than a means to growth. But Kexvar had seen too much war to trust in radical change. Meanwhile, in the crystalline cities of the hegemony core worlds, Velthara faced a different kind of rebellion. Her people's greatest strength, their perfect memory and logical minds, had become a weakness when analyzing the human phenomenon. The more they studied humanity's transformation, the more their youth demanded similar evolution. "The probability matrices are clear," announced her chief analyst, a young crystal named Morveth. "Our current technological development curve will see us surpassed by 17 different species within the next millennium. The humans offer acceleration beyond our most optimistic projections." "At what cost?" Velthara demanded. "We don't know what they've become, what they've sacrificed for this power. Our stability, our certainty, these are not weaknesses to be discarded." But even as she spoke, Velthara knew the argument was lost. 3 of her sector governors had already initiated contact with human representatives. The crystalline youth were abandoning their homeworlds in unprecedented numbers, seeking transformation among the stars. The humans, for their part, had established integration centers throughout the galaxy, massive battle carriers that served as both embassy and recruitment station. These ships existed in flux states, appearing solid to those ready to commit to change while remaining translucent to observers who still clung to traditional reality. Commander Nakamura materialized on the bridge of the integration carrier Prometheus. Unbound, her consciousness distributed across 17 different ships simultaneously. The transformation had continued to accelerate, and she now existed more as a living network than a single individual. "Status report on the integration programs," she requested, her voice harmonizing with itself across multiple dimensions. "Remarkable progress," reported Integration Coordinator Dex. "We've had volunteers from over 30 species. The mollusk refugees are adapting particularly well to quantum consciousness. The academic collective's researchers are making breakthrough discoveries daily. Even some of the trade dominion's merchant princes are requesting economic integration. And the resistors?" Growing more desperate. Admiral Kexvar has formed a coalition of traditionalist forces. They're calling themselves the Preservation Alliance. Their goal is to maintain the old order through force if necessary. Nakamura's distributed consciousness focused on the tactical implications. The Preservation Alliance represented the largest military force in galactic history. Dozens of species united not by shared vision, but by shared fear. They had the numbers and the firepower to cause significant damage, but they lacked understanding of what they were truly fighting. "Prepare for their offensive," she commanded. "But remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to show them that their fears are based on outdated assumptions." The showdown came sooner than expected. The Preservation Alliance assembled a fleet of unprecedented size in the neutral zone between the galaxy's major power centers. Over 10,000 vessels from 24 species, armed with the most advanced weapons their civilizations could produce. Admiral HFY stood at the center of this armada, his battle-scarred features reflecting the weight of command. Around him, holographic displays showed intelligence reports that made no sense. The human battle carriers didn't mass for battle, they simply existed wherever they chose, phasing in and out of reality like cosmic ghosts. "All vessels report ready," Commander Richter announced. "Sir, I must ask one final time. Are you certain about this course?" "The humans have made their choice," HFY replied. "They've chosen to abandon everything that makes a species what it is. We make our stand here for the principle that some things are worth preserving unchanged." As if summoned by his words, space itself seemed to ripple around the Alliance fleet. The human battle carriers didn't approach. They simply were, suddenly present in numbers that defied counting. Each ship existed in multiple states simultaneously, making targeting impossible. "This is Commander Nakamura to the Preservation Alliance," came the transmission. "You've assembled an impressive force to fight an enemy that doesn't exist. We're not here to conquer you. We're here to understand why you're so afraid of becoming more than you are." "Because some things are worth preserving," HFY broadcast back. "Honor, tradition, the knowledge of who we are and where we came from." "Who you are doesn't have to be who you'll always be," Nakamura replied. "We haven't abandoned our humanity. We've expanded it. We're still human. We're just human enough to survive anything." The first shots were fired by the Alliance's most traditional forces, antimatter torpedoes and quantum disruptors that should have been capable of destroying entire star systems. They passed through the human ships like light through water, having no more effect than raindrops on an ocean. Response: the humans didn't return fire. Instead, they did something far more unsettling. They began to demonstrate. Space around the Alliance fleet transformed as the battle carriers showed what they could do with their evolved abilities. Asteroids became gardens. Vacuum became breathable. Atmosphere. The laws of physics bent to serve imagination. The message was clear. This wasn't a battle between equals. This was a choice between transformation and irrelevance. The demonstrations continued for hours. The human battle carriers didn't attack, they created. Where once there had been empty space, now gardens bloomed in protective energy fields. Where radiation should have been lethal, it became the foundation for new forms of life. The Alliance fleet found itself surrounded not by weapons, but by possibilities. Admiral HFY watched from his command bridge as his carefully assembled coalition began to fracture. Ship after ship peeled away from formation, their crews requesting permission to approach the human vessels. The younger officers especially seemed mesmerized by what they were witnessing. "Sir," Commander Richter said quietly, "perhaps we should consider—" "No," HFY cut him off. "This is exactly what they want. They're showing us wonders to make us forget what we're losing. But power without tradition is just chaos waiting to happen." Yet even as he spoke, HFY could feel his certainty cracking. The humans weren't demonstrating chaos. They were showing order of a type he'd never imagined. Their transformations followed patterns that spoke to something deeper than mere technological advancement. On the human side, Commander Nakamura felt the tide turning. Her expanded consciousness touched the minds of thousands of alien crew members, sensing their growing curiosity, their yearning for something more than the endless cycle of territorial disputes and resource wars that had defined galactic civilization. Integration. "Coordinator Dex," she communicated across multiple dimensions. "Begin the final demonstration. Show them what they're really choosing between." Dex nodded, her own consciousness now partially distributed across the fleet. Initiating Project Mirror. Foul. Space around the Alliance fleet began to shift. The human battle carriers used their reality-altering abilities to create a perfect duplicate of the traditional galactic order, a mirror universe where the old ways continued unchanged. In this reflection, the Alliance fleet could see their future, millennia of stagnation, the same conflicts repeated endlessly, the slow decay of civilizations that had forgotten how to grow. But beside it, they created another vision, the integrated galaxy, where species evolved together, where consciousness expanded beyond individual limitations, where the very concept of scarcity became obsolete. It was a future where war was impossible, because every being was connected to every other, where exploration meant diving deeper into the mysteries of existence itself. The contrast was devastating. Faced with the stark choice between eternal repetition and unlimited growth, the Alliance fleet began to collapse. Even the most traditionalist crews found themselves questioning their commitment to the old ways. "This is psychological warfare," HFY broadcast to his remaining ships. "They're using our own dreams against us. Remember who you are. Remember what you're fighting for." But the Admiral's words carried less conviction than before. Deep in his warrior's heart, he recognized the truth of what he was seeing. The traditional order wasn't noble, it was merely familiar. The humans offered something genuinely new. The breaking point came when Velthera's personal cruiser, the Eternal Resonance, broke from the Alliance formation. The crystalline hegemony's leader had seen enough. Her perfect logical mind could no longer deny the mathematical certainty of the choice before them. "Admiral HFY," she transmitted, "I withdraw the hegemony from this alliance. My people will pursue integration with the humans." "Velthara, you're making a mistake," HFY replied, but his protest sounded hollow even to himself. "I'm making the only choice that makes sense," she responded. "The humans haven't destroyed anyone. They haven't conquered anyone. They've simply offered us the chance to become more than we are. My people choose growth over stagnation." The crystalline. Hegemony's departure triggered an avalanche. The academic collective followed, then the trade dominion, then dozens of smaller species. Within hours, the Preservation Alliance had shrunk from 10,000 ships to fewer than 1,000. HFY found himself commanding a fleet of diehards, species and individuals who would rather face extinction than accept transformation. They were the last guardians of the old galaxy, and they knew it. "Sir," Commander Richter said, his voice heavy with resignation, "we have a communication from the human fleet." Nakamura's image appeared on the bridge, but this time she manifested as purely as possible, more human than she had appeared in months. "Admiral, you've made your choice and we respect it. But we want you to understand something. We're not your enemies. We're your children." "Children?" HFY's confusion was genuine. "The human race you knew is gone," Nakamura explained. "We've evolved beyond your recognition. But we evolved using lessons learned from watching all of you. The crystalline hegemony's logic, the reptilian supremacy's honor, the mollusk confederacy's adaptability. We studied you for centuries before we found our own path." HFY felt something shift in his understanding. "You're saying we taught you?" "You taught us what was possible," Nakamura confirmed. "And more importantly, you taught us what limitations we needed to transcend. Every species in this galaxy contributed to our transformation, whether they knew it or not. We are your legacy, as much as we are our own creation." The Admiral's claws relaxed their grip on the command rail. For the first time since the crisis began, he saw the humans not as invaders or corruptors, but as the inevitable result of galactic evolution itself. "What happens to those of us who choose to remain unchanged?" he asked. "You become the guardians of memory," Nakamura replied. "Every civilization needs those who remember where it came from. We offer integration to those who seek growth, but we also need those who preserve wisdom. The galaxy is vast enough for both paths." Around the remaining Alliance ships, space itself seemed to settle into a new configuration. The human battle carriers established protective perimeters, not as conquerors, but as shepherds. They would watch over the traditional species, ensuring their survival while respecting their choice to remain as they were. It was, HFY realized, the most profoundly merciful victory in galactic history. 1 year after the transformation, the galaxy bore little resemblance to its former self. What had once been a collection of competing empires struggling over finite resources had become a collaborative network of consciousness that spanned dimensions. Commander Nakamura, though the title had become largely ceremonial, stood in what had once been the observation deck of the Tempest's wake. The ship itself had evolved far beyond its original form, becoming a living ecosystem that existed simultaneously in 17 different dimensional states. Through her expanded awareness, she could perceive the entirety of human space as a single, coherent organism. "Integration report," she requested, her consciousness touching the network that connected all transformed beings. The response came, not from a single source, but from the collective intelligence that humanity had become. Millions of voices spoke as one, each retaining individual identity while contributing to the greater whole. "Integration proceeds beyond all projections," they replied. "The crystalline hegemony's logical matrices have enhanced our computational abilities by orders of magnitude. The academic collective's research networks have accelerated discovery in ways we never imagined. Even the trade dominion's economic models have evolved into resource distribution systems that make scarcity obsolete." Through the quantum-enhanced viewports, Nakamura watched the new galaxy taking shape. Stellar engineering projects that would have taken millennia now completed in months. Dead systems bloomed with artificial life. The very concept of uninhabitable had become meaningless when reality itself could be adjusted to suit the needs of consciousness. But perhaps most remarkably, the transformed species hadn't lost their essential characteristics. The crystalline hegemony remained logical, but their logic now operated on scales that encompassed multiple universes. The mollusks retained their adaptability, but could now adapt to conditions that existed only in theoretical mathematics. Each species had become more themselves, not less. "And the preservation worlds?" Nakamura asked. "Thriving under our protection," came the reply. "Admiral HFY has established the archive fleet, 17 systems dedicated to preserving the galaxy's pre-transformation history. They've become our memory keepers, ensuring that future generations understand their origins." It was a perfect solution. The traditional species maintained their cultures and values while being protected by the transformed civilizations they had once feared. Rather than being conquered or assimilated, they had found their own vital role in the new cosmic order. A communication request drew Nakamura's attention to the edge of the galaxy. Long-range sensors had detected something unprecedented. Signals from beyond the galactic rim, transmissions from civilizations that existed in entirely separate star clusters. The message, when it came, was both familiar and strange. It spoke of ancient powers, of species that had achieved transformation eons ago, of a community of consciousness that spanned not just galaxies, but the very foundations of reality itself. "Greetings, young transcendents," the message began. "We have watched your evolution with great interest. You have achieved in decades what took us millennia to accomplish. We believe you are ready to join the greater community." Nakamura felt a thrill of anticipation that resonated through the entire human network. The transformation that had begun with a dying star had led them not to the end of their journey, but to its true beginning. They had become something unprecedented in their own galaxy, only to discover that the universe was filled with similar miracles. "Shall we respond?" asked the collective consciousness. Nakamura smiled, feeling the expression ripple through dimensions she hadn't known existed a year ago. "Tell them we're ready to learn. Tell them humanity has always been at its best when facing the impossible. As the response transmitted across intergalactic space, the transformed humans began preparing for their next evolutionary leap. They had conquered their dying star, and transformed their galaxy. Now the universe itself awaited their exploration. Behind them, in the carefully preserved archive worlds, Admiral Kexvar watched the long-range scanners track the human expansion beyond galactic boundaries. His warrior's heart swelled with pride that was equal parts admiration and relief. They really did it, he murmured to Commander Reichtar, who had chosen to remain with the traditionalists. They turned their extinction into transcendence. And they remembered us, Reichtar replied. They could have left us behind, but they made us part of their story. The old admiral nodded, understanding finally that the humans had never been conquerors. They had been gardeners, cultivating possibilities that no one else had imagined. They had taken a galaxy on the brink of stagnation and turned it into a seedbed for unimaginable futures. In the end, no one had expected Earth to survive. Instead, Earth had shown the cosmos what survival really meant. Not just enduring, but becoming something so magnificent that the very concept of limitation became obsolete. The humans had kept their promise. They had conquered the stars, not through force, but through the sheer audacity of refusing to accept that anything was impossible. They had become the universe's answer to its own question. What happens when a species refuses to die? The answer blazed across the cosmos in ships that were no longer ships, in consciousness that was no longer bound by flesh, in a future that expanded with every heartbeat into territories that had no names because language itself was evolving to accommodate new realities. Humanity had not just survived. They had become survival itself, eternally adaptive, eternally growing, eternally reaching toward horizons that retreated before them only to reveal even greater wonders beyond. The stars themselves had become their chrysalis. Now, emerging transformed, they turned their gaze toward infinity and smiled.